Well, thanks so much for joining the second week of the 10-week Arctic Resilience Forum. We're going to be a minute probably before we can upload all the participants. We have over 530 people signed up for this one this week. The Arctic Resilience Forum is hosted by the Icelandic chairmanship of the Arctic Council. It's organized by the Sustainable Development Working Group of the Arctic Council and our Arctic Initiative at the Harvard Belfer Center. And we're thrilled to be bringing you this week's session on food security. This is one of the most pressing resilience issues in the Arctic. And as you can see, there's a ton of people signed up for this one, and the organizers have lined up just an impressive agenda. So before we get started, a couple of housekeeping issues. First of all, there is an interpretation function at the bottom of your screen. The button to the right is an interpretation button. So please click on that and click the language you prefer, whether it be English or Russian. Thanks to the Arctic Council, we have that capacity here. Also, when you registered, you were offered a chance to sign up on a Slack channel for this session. Slack is an app that allows us to continue these conversations before, during, and after the sessions. So please go ahead and do that. We've had some great conversations on there from the last session, and I expect we'll see some more. So we also now have the overall agenda for the resilience framework online. So that link will pop up in the chat section, so you can click on that. But I will just reiterate that this is the second session on food security. Next week, October 21st, we have a fantastic renewable energy session. October 28th, it'll be human health and pandemics. November 11th is broadband connectivity. November 18th, resilience and gender. November 25th, we're looking at social ecological resilience. December 2nd, financing resilience. December 9th, infrastructure and resilience. And then the final one on December 16th, working together in the Arctic, indigenous and Western knowledge systems. So we have a great lineup. And before we begin, I just want to say that last week's inaugural session, which was focused on indigenous youth leadership, really floored me. And I wasn't floored because of the quality of the speakers. There's an amazing pool of youth leaders in the region. I was not surprised by that, but I was floored because the session left no doubt at all that Arctic youth leaders are not the leaders of the future. They're the leaders of today, and those voices really need to be at the table, and not as some token representative of youth, but as really important perspectives that we need to include now. So it was a fantastic session. It's been recorded, as all of these will be. And I'm now going to introduce Jennifer Spence, who is the Executive Secretary of the Sustainable Development Working Group, and she's going to moderate this session. So take it away, Jennifer.
Thanks very much, Joel, and welcome everybody. I'm pleased to see everybody joining in with us today, and the numbers are creeping up. So we're going to start off, we're going to have a series of panels, and that's how this event is going to be organized. So our first panel is really going to be focusing on a Russian perspective on food security. So the Russian Federation recently released a new food security doctrine, and so we're going to hear a bit about that and the why that's important to the Russian Federation. We're then going to move to a session specifically on local perspectives on food security, recognizing that every place is different, and we're going to hear from some really interesting people that can share with you their perspective on the local experience with food security. And finally, we're going to look at sort of some research and innovation around food security and some of the interesting things that people are trying and exploring to really strengthen the resilience of Arctic communities when it comes to food security. So again, that whole agenda is there for you online, but we hope that you will follow along with us as we go. So as a starting point, we're going to start with panel 1, and this is the Russian perspective on food security. And as a starting point, we're going to have a video message on the Russia's food security doctrine from Irina Baskanova, Minister of Agriculture and Trade for the Russian Federation. So we're going to play that video, and then we'll be back with our 2 other panelists. So if we can just start that video now, that would be great. Thank you.
В январе была принята новая абсолютно доктрина продовольственной безопасности. где буквально блоком, в том числе и министерству, которое сегодня занимается пищевой, перерабатывающей промышленностью, Министерство сельского хозяйства Российской Федерации, и органы исполнительной власти, субъектов Российской Федерации, которые в том числе исполняют полномочия по этому направлению, тоже предписан ряд поручений и ряд направлений, в которых они должны двигаться. Хотя, по большому счету, можно сказать, что мы всегда двигались именно в этом направлении. Мы считаем, что наши жители, граждане должны потреблять экологически безопасную продукцию. У нас чисто, к сожалению, пока ничего в мире нет. Есть только экологически безопасная продукция. И люди, проживающие в суровых условиях, они, конечно, должны в первую очередь потреблять ту продукцию, пищевую продукцию, которая будет давать энергию, да, энергию жизни, энергию стремлений, энергию достижений и так далее. Поэтому, конечно, очень приятно, что в доктрине продовольственной безопасности на этом уделено особое внимание. А в основу ложатся сегодня те направления, которые, вот, например, в Министерстве сельского хозяйства была разработана целая дорожная карта по реализации вот этой стратегии доктрины продовольственной безопасности. Если касаться конкретно нашего региона, а мы понимаем, что мы регион Крайнего Севера и основные территории в арктической зоне, то здесь, конечно, для нас самое важное то, что можем мы сегодня произвести и чем себя обеспечить. И эти направления, они определились не сегодня, не вчера, они сложились традиционно уже, веками уже, можно так даже сказать. Традиционно регион Архангельской области, они производили, обеспечили себя картофелем, овощами. Понятно, что фрукты у нас не произрастают, это завозной регион, но, например, тоже молочное направление, производство молока и продуктов переработки, хлебопечения, конечно, мы себя обеспечиваем и можем обеспечить в полном объеме. Я не говорю о том, что сегодня настолько ушли технологии вперед, что те предприятия, которые реализуют глобальный инвестиционный проект, это Устьянская молочная компания, в первую очередь, они уже сегодня рассматривают варианты выпуска не просто молока и продуктов переработки, а именно молока, например, которое не содержит лактозы, и, соответственно, оно будет употребляться в пищу и теми, кто сегодня имеет непереносимость, аллергические реакции на молоко в том виде, в котором оно имеет место быть на потребительском рынке. То есть так называемое А2. То есть сегодня предприятия ищут ниши не только производства традиционных видов продовольствия, но и нетрадиционных, которые сегодня высоко востребованы, потому что все занимаются здоровым образом жизни. Сегодня все понимают, что хотят употреблять более качественную пищу. И, конечно, над качественным предприятием работает очень много людей. Если вернуться к дорожной карте Минсельхоза России, то там есть перечень мероприятий и нормативно-правовых актов, которые должны быть приняты. В настоящее время министерством разработан приказ, он был направлен в органы исполнительной власти для того, чтобы получить предложение от нас, именно в части, касающейся методики расчета уровня самообеспечения населения качественным пищевым продуктом. Там учитывается все. То есть продолжительность жизни, что производит регион, какие должны быть требования к качеству этой продукции. И эта методика, она именно ляжет в основу рекомендаций, которые будут даны, особенно по арктической зоне, это очень важно. Значит, сколько должны употреблять в среднем потребление, да, человек, проживающий в арктической зоне, должен употреблять молочной продукции, рыбной продукции, хлеба того же, да, или продуктов, хлеба и так далее. То есть это только начало пути. Если посмотреть эту дорожную карту, то в ней задействовано не только Министерство сельского хозяйства, там участвует и Минпромторг, и наука, и участвует Минздрав, Роспотребнадзор. Роспотребнадзор уже выпустил методические рекомендации. Таким образом, они проводят мониторинг обеспеченности товарами первой необходимости, качественными товарами. Особое внимание уделяется тем товарам, которые генно-модифицированы, что должно быть на прилавках. Сегодня не просто так работа достаточно серьезно ведется, целые доклады президента пишут по данному вопросу. Действительно, антисанкции, которые были введены несколько лет назад в отношении Российской Федерации по поставкам продовольствия на рынок Российской Федерации, они сыграли свою положительную роль. Почему? Потому что мы видим значительное увеличение объемов производства. Не только по Архангельской области, может быть, у нас не такие большие темпы, но мы видим рост производства молочной продукции. Это очень здорово, потому что та государственная помощь, которая сегодня направляется в рамках государственной программы развития сельского хозяйства, она, естественно, дает свои результаты. Вот. А если смотреть в целом по Российской Федерации, мы видим увеличение объемов, например, тех же корнеплодов, тех же фруктов, тех же зерновых. Сегодня, в общем-то, есть отдельный национальный проект экспорта продукции ТК. Но здесь, понятно, мы как северный регион, здесь честно только по экспорту рыбной продукции. Мы сильно зависим от квот, которые выделяются на вылов вот этого биоресурса. В основном традиционно ловится и поставляется на экспорт. Это треска и пикши, и, конечно, это основной экспортный товар, ну, плюс северная креветка, и с этого года, конечно, камчатский краб, который у нас нашим предприятием был выигран по аукционам, и с октября вот мы его начнем ловить. Надеюсь, что он также пойдет как на экспорт, в том числе и на внутренний рынок.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was, it gives you a real sense of the importance being placed by the Russian Federation on food security. I'd now like to invite our colleague Vladimir Pushkarev, who's the Deputy of the State of Duma of the Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation of the 7th Convocation, Deputy Chairman of the State Duma Committee for Regional Policy and Issues of the North and Far East, to talk to us about his perspective on food security in the Arctic. Do we have Mr. Pushkarev? Are you available? Okay, I think maybe there's a technical difficulty. We'll move on then to Georgy Sukhanov, who is a PhD at the Northern Arctic Federal University at the Business School, and Russian legislation and government support of the food security sector is his specialty. So I invite Georgy to join us now.
Okay, hello, it's me. So first of all, I want to say hello to all the participants and ask to switch on my presentation. Brittany, will you do it? Okay, next slide, please. Some problems. Okay. Our national strategy of the Russian Federation, national security strategy, was approved by decree of the President of the Russian Federation in the year 2015. Next, there was another basic document, which is Russian Federation Economic Security Strategy. And this year, there was the Food Security Doctrine. And I want to give some brief characteristics of this document. Please, next slide. On this slide, you can see some fundamentals of Russian Food Security Doctrine. And I can tell you that they're a little bit changed in comparison with the previous version of the Food Security Doctrine. So first of all, we can see this: what is food security, what are the food security indicators, and balanced food consumption rates and food independence of Russian Federation. So they a little bit changed from the previous version, as I can say, but not so strongly. We can look at the next slide. Here on this slide, you can see the balanced food consumption rates. You can see that there are three difficult two different measurements, and in our doctrine of food security, no one word said to what of these norms we should follow. This is one problem, because from these balanced food consumption rates, they estimated the needs of the country. Next slide, please. On this slide, we can see the Russian Food Security Doctrine indicators. In grain, sugar, vegetable oil, potatoes, fruits and berries, meat and meat products, milk and dairy products, fish and fish products, and salt. And we can compare it with the production of, in the year 2019. You can see that we reached these food security indicators in grain, sugar and potatoes, and meat and meal. For the rest of the indicators, we can see that there is some deficit, and I can tell you that some of these norms was increased in comparison with previous version of our doctrine, which was approved in the year 2010. So this criterion of specific weight of domestic agriculture production in a total amount of commodities resources is identified as some kind of criterion, and it doesn't show the shares of import or export of the products. So please, next slide. The strategic goal of ensuring food security is to provide the country's population with safe, quality, and affordable farm products, raw materials, and food in the quantities that satisfy the balanced food consumption rates. Based on food independence requirements, the major sources of foodstuff are products of agricultural, forestry, fishery, and hunting sectors, as well as the food industry production. The agricultural, fishery, and food industries play central role in the food security assurance. And I can tell also that according to the food security, global food security index, Russia in the year 2019 was ranked as 42, and it's much better than average. It's good. So there is a big progress beginning from the year 2010. So next slide, please. According to this doctrine, on this slide I show some main and, to my point of view, the key tasks for ensuring food security. First of all is sustainable development of production of farm products, raw materials, and food sufficient for ensuring food independence based on the scientifically proven planning concept. The second is production of farm products, raw materials, and food that comply with the established environmental, sanitary, epidemiological, veterinary, and other requirements. The third one is optimizing social, engineering, transport, and other infrastructure components in the rural areas for the development of production of farm products, raw materials, and food. The third point is very actual for our region in the Arctic. So, and also most important thing is the improvement of system of training specialists under secondary and higher educational and additional professional programs for agricultural, fishery, food, and processing industries. Next slide, please. And in the end of my report, I can tell you that one of the main tasks, which is said in the doctrine, is to increase the export, and the export of the food products must be higher than the import. And in the strategic of development of national economy till the year 2030, is said that on the end, till the end of the year 2030, the export of the agricultural products must reach $45 billion. Last year, it was $25 billion. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting and very detailed explanation of the developments in the Russian Federation. I'd now like to invite Vladimir Pushkarev, who is now with us, to join and tell us more about what's happening in the North and Far East.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Продовольственную безопасность в Арктике определяет ее географическое положение, изменение климата, экономическая уязвимость региона. А в 2020 году также добавляется фактор, как пандемия COVID. Региональными факторами роста цен на продовольствие относительно Арктики являются растущие цены на топливо.
I just want to, sorry, I'm going to stop everyone for 1 minute. We are both translators are speaking at the same time. So I'll just ask, forgive me if we can just have Vladimir start one more time. That would be great. Thank you.
You can go ahead, Vladimir. Spasibo.
Что приводит к повышению себестоимости продукции и стоимости его распределения. А это воздействие изменения климата на сельское хозяйство, рыболовство и урожай дикороса. Признано, что ожидаемые экстремальные погодные условия, возникающие в результате изменения климата, будут иметь все более негативные последствия для сельского хозяйства и рыболовства во всех регионах. Это включает в себя и передвижение вредителей растений, возбудителей болезней животных и инвазивных чужеродных водных организмов. Важно отметить возможность участия населения и коренных народов Севера в продовольственном обеспечении региона Арктики и Дальнего Востока. Необходимо более целенаправленно привлекать население и коренные народы к решению задач продовольственной безопасности арктических территорий. Значительная часть коренных народов и сегодня ведут традиционный образ жизни, специфические черты которого играют важную роль в сохранении их своеобразия и обеспечении продовольствия. Правительство Российской Федерации утвердило план мероприятий стратегии государственной национальной политики до 2025 года. В ней поставлена цель сохранения и развития этнокультурного многообразия народов России и закрепленные принципы обеспечения гарантий прав коренных малочисленных народов Севера и включая поддержку их экономического, социально-культурного развития, защиту исконной среды обитания и традиционного образа жизни. В условиях пандемии на первый план вышла продуктовая безопасность Дальнего Востока, где уровень продовольственной безопасности необходимо повышать с помощью инвестиционных проектов, связанных с продовольственным производством продуктов питания. 30 января была закрыта российская граница на Дальнем Востоке в качестве меры по недопущению распространения коронавируса. Позднее была возобновлена работа пунктов пропуска для грузового транспорта на границе с Китаем. Случившееся недалеко от нас, в Китае, эпидемия коронавируса привела к тому, что на Дальнем Востоке по ряду территорий довольно значительно до 1,5 раз возросли цены на овощи. Возросли потому, что собственного предложения недостаточно, а завоз из Китая прекратился. Поэтому, конечно, необходимо дальше повышать уровень продовольственной безопасности на Дальнем Востоке. И также надо создавать пул инвестиционных проектов по укреплению продовольственной безопасности. Все условия, необходимые для подобного развития, есть. Это географические, экономические и реализуемые проекты инвестиционные на сегодняшний день на Дальнем Востоке реализуются. Но здесь также надо понимать, что для большей безопасности надо расширять список таких инвестиционных проектов. На этом спасибо.
Thank you so much, Mr. Puskarev. I think that you've raised some extremely important questions and really come to the heart of what resilience in the Arctic means and what food security, the importance of food security in this context. So thank you so much for sharing this with us and offering your insights in terms of the experience right now with the pandemic. I'd now like to pass on to the panel 2, which is our panel on local perspectives on food security. Here we're going to have the opportunity to speak with a number of different representatives, and I'd like to start with Liza Mack, who's the director of the Aleut International Association, and she's going to speak about the importance of food security in her communities. Liza?
Kilomikovna, everybody. Aluk Taftua Slakta Cooking. My name is Liza Mack. I'm the executive director for Aleut International Association. I'd like to start by saying thank you to the organizers of this panel and for inviting us at AIA to participate in this very important topic. So I grew up in a small town at the end of the Alaska Peninsula. If you think about the continent of North America and you look the farthest western point out there, that's where we live. That is the Unang region. And Aleut people have lived here and in the islands that stretch from Alaska to Russia for thousands of years. So our culture is based on the ocean. Unang actually means people of the sea. Our food sources are based on all things in the ocean. We have hunted and fished and harvested things forever. Seals, sea lions, kawach, ala, whale, marine mammals, all 5 species of salmon, cod, halibut, and crab. The region itself is ice-free, which means that we have access to the ocean and to the abundance of food there all year round. So along with these things, we also have reefs and tide pools, and we like to say that when the tide is out, the table is set. And so we are able to harvest food with the rise and the fall of the tides. We have access to bararkis or black katy chitons, octopus or umgu, crab, clams, and then during certain times of year, that's when we can harvest clams. But actually knowing when you can do that and knowing when it's okay to do that and not be poisoned is actually part of, you know, the knowledge that we have and that we have within this place. And so I've been fortunate to conduct a lot of research that has led me back to my communities and given me a better understanding of how we're able to actually continue our lifeways and being present in dialogues where decisions are made. So these decisions about natural resource management and understanding that political ecology, or the premise that politics play a role in designations of land and waters, and that these are negotiated spaces, are important to being able to continue to hunt and fish. As it is getting closer to winter, you know, we have definitely are aware of what we have on hand. We spend the summer gathering foods, wild foods, petrushkis, wild parsley, fish, berries, ducks, all these different things that we use to survive through the winter. Just for myself, I always think about not really how much you have, but more of how many. Like I like to think about how much or you have different plants and you have different berries and you have different fish and you have all these things that, you know, build up your foodstuffs for winter. But even with these subsistence food, we are part of the modern society and we rely upon the shipment of outside foods to be brought into our communities. Our villages are not connected by roads. You cannot drive there. You can only fly there or take a boat to get there. And so we definitely have access issues, and all of our food is shipped in. Everything that I just didn't mention that you get from all grocery stores. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've actually highlighted the factor that we are so isolated. There have been challenges with air shipment, and also even just weather and different things that that create a challenge for food to be brought in. Along with the COVID-19 pandemic, like, we do see that there are changes that are happening within our climate that contribute to our people being able to harvest food. One example would be increased storms, which makes it difficult to be on the water and dangerous. So as we kind of think about these things, and we think about food security and what it means for us, we see the utility in planning for the future and addressing future food security needs. From our perspective, we need a plan to be able to access food when it's readily available, to be able to store it and to store it properly so that nobody gets sick from it. And then we also need to be able to have access to things that aren't grown in the region, fruits and vegetables, for example. We are currently working with our communities to provide an inventory of places around the Aleut region who are growing food, for example. We're working with within the SCWG with the Canadian project, the Arctic Food Innovation Cluster, because we know that providing this more holistic picture is really imperative to not only continuing our subsistence livelihood, but also contributing to the dialogue about how food is gathered, how it's shipped, and how it's distributed within our region, because we know that working together to provide this picture will help us all. So, Kagasakun, thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Liza. I think you really touch on so many of the diverse elements, and I mean, whether it's the storing and the accessibility of food. I thank you so much for sharing that. I'm now going to invite Anders Oskal, who's the Secretary General of the Association of World Reindeer Herders, to join us. And I just want to add before Anders starts that we are going to take questions from the audience after this panel is complete. So if you'd like to ask a question, please put it in the question and answers section, and we will pose those questions to the panelists. So, Anders?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, thank you for the invitation. We understand there was a last-minute cancellation, and I was invited to say a few words about our work on food and resilience, which we are delighted to contribute. To illustrate, I've taken the liberty of creating a small PowerPoint. I will now share the screen, if hopefully you can all see it. I will be talking of one of our ongoing projects in the Arctic Council called Aleut, which is a Sami word meaning a herd, or more specifically a reindeer herd, which is what provides the food for our nomadic indigenous peoples. I also want to draw the attention to the topic, local perspectives. This project that we are currently working on has very much a circumpolar perspective. Even though food knowledge and understanding and indeed resilience of indigenous peoples in the Arctic can be local in nature, contextual in nature, I will try to elaborate on the overall perspectives in this talk. And as far as reindeer herders goes, we are spread across 10 national states in the Arctic and subarctic region. There are 24 different indigenous peoples, all which follow a diversity of different livelihoods and adaptations based on the food resources and ecosystems of our northern homelands. And so reindeer herding is a way of life that is very old in the Arctic. It is an original civilization of the north, with very deep knowledge rooted in generations after generations of close dependence and observance of nature. And this is, of course, crucial when we talk about resilience. Now, the Arctic is changing, as we all know. The combination of change drivers is a legitimate concern for the future resilience of some of our reindeer herding societies and peoples. And this led us to discuss whether we could have another type of development of the North, a development that is based on our own premises, that being our own knowledge, our own traditional indigenous knowledge, our own resources, and our own people. And this very naturally led us into this type of resilience thinking, addressing the resilience of our communities, led us very naturally into the field of food. And the situation today is, of course, that as far as reindeer herders goes, at least, the food knowledge that we have, our peoples have developed over centuries and millennia, is of course used on a daily basis, but it is not used and utilized much when it comes to economic development of our society, strengthening the economic base of our societies and communities. And so this project of ours is, we could say, a new approach to address the rapid changes in the Arctic, looking at how we could use our traditional knowledge, our traditional food systems to develop our own resilience, to develop our own economies, and to develop also and maintain our pride in our cultures and knowledge from time of old. And looking at these food systems, it's quite interesting. There are quite a few similarities, some differences, but it's striking to us that there seems to be quite a bit of similarities in that we have fairly simple production environments. We use relatively few ingredients, but the knowledge is really hidden in some part in our understanding of the raw materials and the knowledge about the nature upon which we base our food cultures. And common to all is also what we might like to term true sustainability, how we are really using nature in a sense that preserves our systems for the future. And so I show different pictures of smoking of meat from Scandinavia, from Western Siberia, from North America, and also Eastern Siberia, to illustrate a few of these similarities. And out of this project also came a report for the 2017 ministerial meeting of the Arctic Council. And this report was presented at the ministerial meeting, and we later translated it also into Russian to have full access, more accessibility across the Circle Polar North. This report was also nominated to a prize, which we ended up winning. Our team of 50 plus indigenous youth who drove this whole project through by their own leadership ended up being declared the best food book of the year in 2018, competing with food books from 116 national states. So our knowledge about food and food culture, our traditional indigenous knowledge, if you will, can be truly the best in the world. An aspect that we're working with a lot is education as a facilitator of resilience. And one of the things we've done is to also establish a separate program in food innovation leadership to provide for our youth mechanisms and tools by which they can develop their own products, develop their own businesses, bring these products to market. Another very interesting venue we are exploring is that of the northern sea routes. As the ocean is opening up in summertime for now, there is an increasing shipping traffic along the sea routes, here exemplified by the northeastern sea route. And of course, especially when we look to the east, there is very variable and very scarce infrastructure available. But we think, and we do believe, that the northern sea routes can also become a market channel for products also from Arctic indigenous communities, thereby bridging the contact between our products, our knowledge, our understanding, and markets elsewhere. So that's also a part of the resilience picture that we are working on. Finally, I would like to say that what I think is very important when we look at resilience and the changes ongoing in the Arctic is to try to focus so that an opportunity of a changing Arctic is indeed an opportunity for all. And it's very important to not leave anyone behind in the sustainable development of the Arctic. And this is about people, this is about knowledge and resources. And while, of course, our knowledge is anchored locally and contextual, it certainly has a circumpolar, not to say a global, possibilities attached to it. And finally, I will also say that in this time of COVID, we think it's very important to recognize that the indigenous people's food systems can and should play an even stronger role in securing food in the Arctic, and to also allow for training to avoid training for these type of special events, crisis events, to avoid conflicts and the complications. Anyway, thank you so much for the invitation, and that was my contribution.
Thank you so much, Anders. I can tell you that Aleut has a special place in the heart of the Sustainable Development Working Group. It is an amazing project, and I hope that many people will learn more about it and the work that you do, because it really is an impressive effort that you make, and especially with the involvement of youth. I think it's a really amazing combination that it's a magical combination that you've come to. So I hope we'll have a chance to share it with more people. I'd now like to invite Dele Rahim, who's a senior researcher at the Arctic Center at the University of Lapland, Finland, and he's going to talk to us about strengthening the local food system to withstand disruptions with a focus on Finnish Lapland.
Yes, good afternoon from the northern parts of America, and evening from Rovaniemi in Finland. I will try to share my screen. I have only 3 slides to show in this 5 minutes conversation, or what I would like to call the live dialogue. And thanks to Lisa and then Anders for setting the scene quite nicely. And congratulations for this Aleut Award in 2018. So my talk basically is linked to resilience. So I will be, can you see my screen? Strengthening the local food system to withstand disruptions, with a special focus on the Finnish Lapland. Yes, I hope you can see my screen. Yes, please, can you please confirm, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm at the Arctic Center, which is a multidisciplinary institute of the University of Lapland. My background is in food science, but I've learned to work with other disciplines in this current position at the Arctic Center. So we are interested in transformation in the food system. And I think by next year, there will be this global food system, because we need to change this current food system. basically, at the moment, we have a lot of disruptions in the food system, which is also causing a lot of disruptions at different stages of the food system. So if you look at the current situation, the disruption is happening not only pre-processing, but also at the post-harvest stages. But the second slide is focused on the food production in the Arctic region. As we have had, there's a lot of efforts to merge both the traditional knowledge and the scientific knowledge. This, in a sense, will kind of improve the sustainability issues, both in terms of the social, environmental, and the economical stability. So because the food system is a complex system, as we see in the last slide, so it also ties in with the issue of climate change, because agriculture or agri-food system is nature dependent. And if we look at the issues of greenhouse gas emissions, so it's important that the operations, both in terms of processing, also packaging, and also how the food eventually gets to to our homes, is well managed efficiently. And I think COVID, in a way, is will fast track our kind of thinking that we need to digitalize whenever it is possible. And also, it is also making local communities to look inwards. As I was listening to the Russian experience, that in a way, the problems a few years ago made Russia to look more inward. So now we have this pandemic, we are forced to look inward to be more food secure. So I will like to engage in further conversation, during this our discourse today. I know the time is very limited. So for the active food industry, there are a lot of factors, like in Lapland, we have good infrastructures, the network is very good, which also has, in a way, helped to develop the local food system. I was involved in a project which is on digital architecture as a roadmap for local food businesses in Finnish Lapland. And I think this is also something that we need to ensure that the small players also engage with digital solutions, because in most cases, we tend to have this digital divide where we have the key food processors taking advantage of the digital solutions at the expense of the small players. So these are issues I think we need to critically look into if we are going to try to transform the food system. And then finally, just to say that in terms of complexity, in here we have this particular pie where the lower pie is showing those food system activities and the actors, what is happening, at the bottom, is also being influenced by different drivers, ranging from the infrastructure, society and culture, the profit margin, politics and policies, research, development and innovation, the energy input, also the biophysics and environmental factors, both in the water, in the soil, in the air, and of course it's driven by economy, the power dynamics and equity. The demographics of the society is also influencing the food system. For example, the Generation Z, they are more transparent, they are quite digital natives, so they are always interested in Instagramming their food, what they are consuming most of the time. And of course, also we also look into issues of waste and disposal, not only the food itself, but also the packaging, case in point, plastic waste. So these are all interrelated factors, just to say that, it's not only local, but also it's extending globally. So I will stop at this, and I'm hoping that we continue to engage in this food for thought, just to see how we try to transform the food system. So I thank you very much for your attention. And so I will
Thank you so much, Dele. And don't go away. We're going to invite Liza and Anders to join us. I just want to, well, they're joining us. I just want to say how much I love your last visual. I think it really highlights what we've been trying to cover with this resilience forum, which is really the interconnections between all these different things. And it's so interesting and important to see that food is affected by energy, is affected by infrastructure. And so you've really sort of captured the intent of what we're trying to do with this. So I now have, I'd like to get the screen to show all of the group, if we can do that. And so we have Anders, Liza, and Dele, and we have a question from the audience, which is, says, from a Canadian perspective, really the issue is not about food that is accessible locally. This is from Trevor Donald. He really is sort of expressing that it's the cost of shipping of food from the south to the north. And so he really sort of wants to get at this question of how do we transition from subsidizing the industry for shipping of food to subsidizing the food itself for the consumer. I know this is quite a Canadian question, which is a real challenge we have in Canada. I wonder, Liza, if you have a comment on that, since in some ways you have a similar situation in Alaska.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that is certainly, you know, at the forefront of all of our minds as far as like supply chains and being able to access these items that need to be shipped in, for sure. And that's kind of one of the ideas behind doing an inventory and figuring out what people have been able to do locally, and what is feasible, and also what is proper to be done in that area. I think that it certainly takes, like I said, a lot more planning and conversations with those of us who do live in Arctic communities about what the needs are and how those needs are best met. But I mean, I certainly, I understand for sure, like what it costs to ship things and what those supply chains actually mean to the security of a community.
Great, thank you. We actually have a question from Vladimir Pushkarev, and he wants to know, what are some concrete ways that the Russian government will support indigenous peoples as climate change threatens reindeer populations through diminished access to food and disease? Is the federal government going to work to push regions to improve indigenous control over their lands? And I wonder, Anders, if you have any thoughts on this question.
That may have been a question to the Russian Federation and not to me. But of course, yes, to have lands for the reindeer is of course critical to maintain its function in our food systems. And if we look at the Arctic as a whole, of course there are, as I used to say, there are good and bad examples everywhere. And I think to maintain and not fragment the reindeer pastures and migration routes is a critical concern on the long term for most areas, and in some cases quite important to deal with that also on the short term time scale. So that's clearly, of course, important. If I may, Madam Chair, address the former question as well.
Please.
We also have reindeer herders, a few of them in North America. Now, shipping, of course, that's one thing is of course the cost. Another thing is of course that of sustainability with emissions and so on. we've had a situation lately where caribou populations have been declining. Not everyone and not unanimously, but in some regions more than others, constituting a serious concern for food security of indigenous and other communities. In a situation where, for instance, Alaska is importing 93% of its food. Of course, there's a lot of subsistence here, a lot of moose and salmon and caribou in the freezers, but still that is a very high number. So I think that is a matter of concern. Without, let's say, blowing our own horn too much, I would say that in Alaska, for instance, today, Canada as well, there are unused reindeer pastures which are quite, not to say uniquely suitable for reindeer herding, that could be part of the solution if so desired locally.
And Anders, you'll be more than happy to help with the training, I hope.
Yes, and we have had dialogue. The Association of World Rangers have had and have dialogue with different organizations and peoples, and of course everyone who knows me know that I'm a little bit over average interested in reindeer. So yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Dele, I now have a question for you. Can you provide an example of what a digital solution would be that increases sustainability?
Yes, thank you very much, Marisol, for that question. I could see the question in the chat box. I think, for example, if you think about food fraud, for example, we have had cases of food fraud. You know, for instance, we have, I think, in different, like in China, we had this issue of melatonin in milk, or even things like salmonella in eggs in the UK and things like that, so, or horse meat scandal. So if there's a kind of digital tool to ensure that what is being declared as an ingredient on that food product is actually what it is, then, you know, it's making more, you know, making it more safe for people. So we are, this is one example of how digital solution could help. And of course, there are a few other examples. I mean, if we, for example, think of this current COVID situation, we're having cases, for example, in Finland, we tend to have people coming from Thailand to pick berries from the farm or other, you know, within the, so this is, there have been some, you know, if people cannot come, you know, to do the berry picking, so a lot of berries get wasted in the farm if it doesn't happen. So if you can have a solution in the future, you know, like robots picking these berries, so you are kind of, you know, keeping it, you know, within the local food system, you know, we keep going. And of course, also in terms of packaging, because packaging is not only to protect the food, it is also to inform the consumers. So nowadays we're having all these different QR codes, which can tell a lot, you know, about how it is being processed, what has happened, you know, tell stories to the consumers. You know, consumers are interested in stories behind how the product is being processed and how it gets to them. So these are issues, I think, you know, and I think this COVID is also a kind of, I would say, a kind of a catalyst. You know, it's kind of speeding up our ability to embrace digitalization. And of course, there is no new technology without drawbacks, you know, but of course, I think now, you know, everybody is almost an expert on using Zoom. You know, so every day I could have maybe 5 or 6 different Zoom meetings. So now this is the kind of way that, you know, digitalization is the future. We got to embrace it. Is that how you join the bandwagon, or you'll be left behind? So this is my take on that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I could go on and ask all of you more questions. I'm sort of reluctant to continue on, but I'm going to now move on to my third panel. So thank you so much to all of you for your thoughts and contributions. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. So then I'd like to move on to our third panel. This one is looking at research and innovation in food security. And we have another collection of experts to speak with. So I want to first introduce Tatiana Sorokina, who's a PhD and the head of the Arctic Biomonitoring Laboratory in Northern Arctic Federal University. And she's going to talk to us about biomonitoring in the Russian Arctic, first results and forward steps. If Tatiana would like to join us.
Yes, thank you very much. Do you hear me?
Yes.
That's great. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of Arctic Resilience Forum for bringing us together today to discuss very important issues of food security in the Arctic. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say a few words about the work of our laboratory. And I think that many participants have already had an opportunity to watch a film about Arctic Biomonitoring Laboratory of the NARFU, which we have added to the additional materials. And I hope that if you haven't watched it yet, you will have this opportunity later. So this 7 minutes video explains when and why our laboratory was created and what the focus of our work was for the last 4 years. So I will not speak about this today. Today I want to focus your attention on the key points that we consider important for ourselves for now. We all know that our health depends largely on the state of the environment. But our health also depends a lot on food we eat. To ensure the life of a person, it is important that their diet is healthy, not polluted, and provides a full set of essential vitamins and elements. In the harsh climate of the Arctic, this is a requirement for human survival. And we didn't think about this when we have started our work on monitoring of inorganic and organic pollutants in the Russian Arctic, so-called PEEPs and POPs. We needed to determine only concentrations of pollutants in the blood of northern people and in traditional food. In this sense, we have closed a gap in the Russian state system of environmental monitoring and food quality control. Because migratory species of fish, birds, and marine mammals that are harvested by people themselves do not enter the market are not subject to a state control. So it soon became clear to us that this was not enough. We conducted research on traditional diet of indigenous and non-indigenous residents of the Russian Arctic. We conducted questionnaires and we studied common diseases of people in the north. And we have found many gaps, not only in the system of the state control and monitoring, but also in the system of scientific research. For example, scientists dealing with the effects of toxicants on human health do not pay attention to deficits of vital elements and vitamins. But these deficiencies can increase the negative effect of pollutants on human health. And at the same time, medical research on vitamin status of northern people usually stop at the stating of fact of deficit and does not go beyond the recommendations for taking bioactive supplements. Thus, today, the greatest hunger in the field of food security research we feel in providing a comprehensive and interdisciplinary approach to research and monitoring of food quality. And during our work, we also face a lack of information. We have a need to create some kind of focal points where various monitoring data would be collected and presented for different interested parties. Such focal points could become centers of competence with focus not only on collecting information, but also on spreading knowledge and education. And of course, we believe that such centers should be located within the Arctic territories. And concluding my speech, I would like to pay your attention that food security is not among the main priorities of the state policies in the Arctic, unfortunately. but at the same time, it is one of the most important issues in ensuring Arctic resilience. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tatiana. I think that you really get to sort of the biomonitoring and the impacts of understanding the actual nutrition in food is such an important part to look at, so that it's not just about consuming, but actually looking at the health of that comes from that food. So thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Petri Muhier, and apologies if I'm mispronouncing your last name, maybe you can correct me, who's with Agrofor, and he's a project manager at the Lapland University of Applied Sciences. Petri, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to present our project. So I will share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. Okay, it seems that I have a...
There we go.
Okay, I try to find it. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes,
okay.
That's it, you got it.
Okay, thank you very much. So the background of the project is that, in fact, in northern areas, there is a huge potential in non-timber forest products. So, for example, in Finland, we utilized only about 10% of the wild berries or mushrooms available. However, due to the annual fluctuation in the production, there is always insecurity of raw material supply. So here you can see some figures about I think bilberries. So despite the truth that we have a lot of raw materials, we can't be secure that we will get similar supply every year. So this means that we need new concepts. So the background of the project is that, first of all, we have to improve the utilization of existing harvest. There we have this kind of modern technologies like digitalization, as Dele has been telling you, remote sensing, geographical information system, communality, and so on. Then we have to develop the management practices in the forest. So we have different kind of countries in the Scandinavia. For example, in Finland, we have very heavy forest industry, and we are using the forest, let's say, much more than Norway or Russia is doing. And third thing is the development of half cultivation, agroforestry. And now we are coming to the main thing of this presentation, our project. We have got funding from CPC program, EU CPC program. We started in 2018 and will continue for one more year. The Lapland University of Applied Sciences is a lead partner, and then we have Northern Arctic University from Arkhangelsk Natural Research Institute, Finland, and Norwegian Institute of Bioeconomy Research. What we actually are doing in the project, so we are developing a virtual environment in which we can model what is happening to, for example, to berry production if we are using a different ways of harvesting timber. Then we are developing the models for the agroforestry-based business. What is the commercial potential for these activities? NARFU has already done the first phase of state-of-the-art. What are the traditions behind using the non-forest, non-timber forest products? Now we are going more deeply to this topic with the additional research on legislation and social dimensions behind the use of this kind of natural resources. The situation in Scandinavian countries in Russia is a little bit different in how we can utilize the supply. And of course, when we go to the half cultivation agroforestry, so then we have this everyone's rights, which are quite strong in Scandinavia when we are talking about let's say farming, and when we can say that not everyone has a possibility to come to the area and, for example, pick the berries. Some pictures, what we have done. We have, for example, made some pilot areas where we have burned the area, cut it, the vegetation in different kind of ways. With the mushrooms, we have been working with the chaka cultivation, for example. So this was fast introduction to the project. If someone is interested in the project, so I'm happy to tell you more, and I think there is also the contact address for all the presentations, so you may also send me email or so on.
Wonderful.
Hey,
thank you so much, Petri. Our last presentation will be by Kelly Ulig, and again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing your last name. Kelly, she's a project coordinator at Coordinated Observation of Arctic Change, and she's going to speak with us now.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Really pleased to be here today. Yeah, my name is Kelly Ulig, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about this new NSF-funded research networking activity for sustained coordinated observations in the Arctic, something that we're calling Arctic Co-Obs. So let me start sharing. There we go. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So first, I just want to take a moment and say that I'm also a program analyst with NOAA's Global Ocean Monitoring and Observing Arctic Research Program, and this is in sort of an in-kind support position to UAF, the University of Alaska at Fairbanks, and their International Arctic Research Center. I'm joining you today from the traditional lands of the Piscataway and Nacotchtank peoples along the Potomac and Anacostia rivers and what is now known as Washington, D.C. So to set the stage a little bit, we know that there are a lot of existing networks out there collecting information. Let me get rid of this, sorry. We know that there are a lot of networks out there collecting observations and data in the Arctic, but it's really often difficult to see how those research activities are aligning or what they're working for towards. So under the Arctic Council and IASC, the Sustaining Arctic Observing Network Initiative, or SAON, has really come forward as a forum for articulating a vision for this connected, collaborative, comprehensive, and hopefully inclusive long-term pan-Arctic observing system that respond specifically to societal needs and the needs of Indigenous peoples of the Arctic. So under the current chair of SAON, Sandy Starkweather, that group has put forward this new framework that they're calling the Roadmap for Arctic Observing and Data Systems, or ROADS, the ROADS process. And what this is really aiming to do is to bring together a broad range of different activities into alignment under a bottom-up approach that focuses on kind of shared societal benefit. And this is really to be accomplished by identifying things like essential variables and shared Arctic variables that contribute to shared societal benefits, and then that can further lead into co-design and co-management of these observing system components, and then ultimately to the data systems that meet the goal of those societal needs. So that's where my new project comes in, Arctic Co-ops. We're going to be serving as sort of a pilot project for this SAON ROADS approach, demonstrating that by focusing our observing efforts through a food security lens, that we can help guide and develop data and information products to enhance Indigenous food security. For now, we're really focusing in the Pacific Arctic sector, specifically in Alaska, as that's where we have most of our connections, and there's already a pretty robust observing network in the area. So our overall goal is to really co-develop this food security roadmap for the Pacific Arctic, and to therefore inform and help implement the SAON ROADS process at a pan-Arctic scale. So all of our efforts are being done in close collaboration and partnership, and are really driven by the Arctic Observing Summit's Food Security Working Group, which is being led by Rachel Daniel. So we're essentially going through this under a coordination framework that leads through this requirements framework and eventually into design and information infrastructure of an Arctic observing system that leads to enhance Indigenous food security through return of data and information into the communities who are asking for that information. So further, the group, the Arctic Observing System Food Security Working Group, is comprised of Indigenous peoples from across the Arctic, and they're in the process of refining the Inuit Circumpolar Council Alaska's food security framework to come up with a decision-making framework that will help us define the requirements needed to meet the holistic 6 dimensions of food security as laid out by ICC Alaska. And so we're trying to approach this from a very co-production of knowledge point of view, and hoping to be truly responsive to the needs of communities living with food insecurity every day. So this is a general overview of kind of what we're attempting to accomplish. We're aiming to work through a food security lens that narrows down these societal benefit areas, such as healthy and sustainable communities, Indigenous knowledge and values, climate change adaptation, things like national security and the blue economy, to simplify and identify shared Arctic variables and observing requirements that can inform observations, current sensors, and also allow us the opportunity to revamp some of those observing networks and maybe rebuild them in order to support the harvesting of data and information to create products that are truly useful to vulnerable communities as they work to make decisions to inform their subsistence way of life that is, central to physical, cultural, and spiritual well-being. So this is just an overall view of our project scope, and we're just really getting started. We were just awarded our award in June, I believe. So we're still getting underway, and we're really looking to grow our community of practice and build capacity in Alaska Native and Indigenous people organizations in order to really support these development of tools and to further anchor the Arctic Observing Summit as a forum for planning these observing efforts in a more collaborative manner. So I'll just end with an overview of our key contacts and personnel. We have a website, and I'll be sure to post all of this information in the Slack channel afterward. But you can contact Hayo Aiken, who is the PI on this project, or myself if you have any further questions. And I also listed Josie Sam's information here. She is the Food Security Working Group Coordinator if you have any questions about what that group is up to. So thank you so much.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much, Kelly. I think it's always great to hear about work to connect the dots so that we're working and collaborating together on these things. There's so many interesting and important things that are taking place. And the more that we can find those connections, I think the more that, you know, we actually are moving all in the same direction. So thank you so much for sharing that. And we're running out of time, sadly. We had hoped, well, it's one of the great challenges, so many great presenters. So I'm going to ask, we have a number of questions. What I'm going to do is ask people, we're going to move those questions into the Slack, and I hope that people will continue the conversation in the Slack. We have, and you have contact information for different people, but I'm afraid we don't have time before we're going to lose people for any questions. So my apologies for that. What I am going to do is just sort of emphasize that that research and innovation is a really important part of this, and that through the Sustainable Development Working Group, we have a group called the Arctic Food Innovation Cluster, which Liza mentioned earlier in her presentation. And this is a group that really is trying to bring together expertise in different areas. And it is led by Canada, who unfortunately wasn't here to speak to the project today. But it is an important opportunity to bring some of these discussions together. And we hope that you will take a look on the website for the event. We also shared the Russian Federation's video related to their participation in the Arctic Food Innovation Cluster. So I hope that you will check that out. And I would now like to hand this over to Marisol Maddox, who is actually the brain behind this whole event. She's done a huge amount of work to bring this all together, and she's going to give us some of her key thoughts and takeaways from today's event. So Marisol.
Thank you so much, Jen. Yeah, so I guess, you know, this was obviously a very diverse panel, and I kind of purposefully wanted to have a lot of representation from different perspectives, because I think it's really important to note that when considering food security for the Arctic, this isn't something that is a homogeneous undertaking, and it's something that really, even the way that we think about food security and how we define it and the words that we use, and even, you know, that there are constraints around even just using specifically English words to be, and concepts to be thinking about food security. So this really ties in with, you know, the immense value that Indigenous cultures bring to the world through language and practices. And so I really hope that there will be more opportunity to kind of you know, take some of these concepts from other languages and kind of explore how we are thinking about food security. And so, yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we had a representation from government, from the local perspective, and then from obviously like innovation researchers, technology, and the way that COVID has really kind of exposed a lot of these issues around supply chain and around access to food. It's really brought to the forefront some of these issues around food security for the Arctic that really do need to be addressed. And so I'm hoping that we can use some of that momentum to make, you know, to increase dialogue on these challenges and to try to make progress on these issues. And as Jen mentioned, Canada has been leading some great work in the Arctic Council. And so moving forward, I'm hoping that, you know, some of what has emerged with COVID and the ways that we're seeing that non-traditional ways of thinking about food security are really valuable for consideration of how we are, you know, planning for the future. And so kind of leveraging the positive things from this disruptive pandemic to try to really make progress. And, you know, and I think this is also something that with the world just experiencing a lot of different challenges in a lot of different ways at this time, you know, this food security is something that all 8 of the Arctic nations have in common, and food insecurity is something that is a shared threat for everybody. And so I think it is especially important to be finding the places where we do have those commonalities, where it's really in our interest to be working together and increasing dialogue and you know, sharing ideas and perspectives, and that not only would we be able to you know, achieve, you know, progress in reaching the food security that we need, but also, you know, build relationships and have cross-cultural exchange and just kind of help. There's a real ability to work on peace building through addressing food. And then also it's fun to, you know, learn about different ways of preparing foods and just having that exposure, and it gives you an appreciation for that. And then you know, with certain things like with the reindeer, I think that if more people were exposed to this incredible culture that exists around around these herds, that there's also then a greater desire to protect them and to understand their role within the larger stability of the region, not just the physical stability, but also you know, the cultural stability and the real value that that has intrinsically. So I'd like to hand it over now to Joel to close us out, and just want to say thank you so much to everybody. Thank you to Brittany Janice at Harvard for helping to put this together, and also to Lyubov Zarubina from NARFU for all of her work. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Marisol, for your work as well. The Wilson Center has been a fantastic partner throughout. It clearly from this session, food security is a top-level resilience priority in the Arctic, as evidenced by a new Russian policy. But of course, there are many aspects to the issue, as we learn here, not least the difference between Western food systems and indigenous food systems. And building resilience for these different systems requires investment in a very collaborative approach. And we've seen some great examples in this session that you've organized here of the research and tools that we need for that. Now, I should note that there's more happening in Arctic food security than could be featured in this session. There's a lot happening out there. For example, the Inuit Circumpolar Council has an impressive list of reports and projects on food security and food sovereignty. So please do log into that Slack channel for follow-up conversations about the many efforts underway. You can also bring the questions that you weren't able to get answers to. There'll be people in there to address those questions. And I also want to remind viewers, because I forgot to do so at the start of the session, that the Arctic Resilience Forum is a project of the Arctic Council, following up on the Arctic Resilience Action Framework that was signed by the Arctic ministers in 2017. That was the world's first regional framework for building resilience, and conversations like this are the direct result of that. And because the Arctic is transforming into a new climate state, and that transformation is accelerating, resilience has become a major focus in the Arctic. And by resilience, I should say, we mean the ability of communities and individuals, organizations, ecosystems to cope with and learn from these impacts associated with this transformation, to bounce back stronger. And that's what these conversations are all about. There's a video on our webpage giving you a little bit of a primer on resilience. Also the welcome videos from the Icelandic chairmanship and the SDWG chair. So thank you from the Harvard Arctic Initiative and from the Sustainable Development Working Group and from the Icelandic chairmanship of the Arctic Council for tuning in today. Be sure to tune in next week to hear from experts about some exciting renewable energy projects that are underway to build resilience in the region. Thank you so much, and see you next week.